can run, but you can't hide from the radio detective. Jerry Pearce, private investigator, president of the Pearce Corporation, and lifetime member of the law enforcement community, is the radio detective. Catching bad guys on the run.
We're after him, Jason. The bad guys are on the run. I'm Jerry Pearce, the radio detective, with you. And in tonight's last hour, we're going to be talking about whatever you want to talk about. It's Squad Room night here on the Radio Detective Show. Without further ado, as you say, Jason, we've had Greg waiting quite a while on the horn here. Greg, welcome to the show, sir.
Good evening.
How are you?
Doing very well, thank you.
Good. What's up, babe?
Well, sir, I was listening to your comments earlier about the this wall of silence between police officers and how they often cover up for each other when there's bad deeds going on.
I was just asking if do you believe that's true? I mean, do you believe there's really a wall of silence?
I believe in some agencies. Of course, there are. Currently, I'm a cadet at the California Highway Patrol Academy in Sacramento.
Okay.
And I can tell you that from the California Highway Patrol's perspective, that kind of thing is just simply not even tolerated.
Right.
We receive countless hours of ethics and professionalism classes, and we are encouraged every minute of the day to turn in fellow officers, classmates that we see that are violating the rules, and it just stuff. So.
Now, do you think that kind of? Let me ask you this, Greg. And are you almost through the training? You just started, or?
Just about through.
Okay,
about
now
three quarters of the way through.
Let me just get with you on this for a moment and ask you a couple of things. Let's say that you have this policy in the training program, and we all know that training programs are training programs, and life's going to be different for you when you get on the job. Okay.
Sure it is.
But breeding that kind of stuff in the academy about snitching off your fellow cadets on minor infractions of some policy, does that at all strike you as being healthy for the department?
Well, it has to be taken obviously on a case-by-case basis. You're not going to run to the staff office and report a cadet who has drawn his weapon properly in the dorm room or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, cadets who are deliberately cheating on tests and make it known to everyone, or cadets who have violated a major academy policy and or have lied about their exams or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I know for me, it took me 3 years to get into this academy because there is such a very rigorous screening process.
I'm going to tell you something. I want to ask you this. I'll make you a bet. I bet you haven't found one person in there that's done that stuff, have you?
Actually, no.
See,
no.
And that's what I'm saying about this whole thing. The average guy or gal going through these training academies and on the job, the majority of them are not the problem. It's these very minor few, and I mean, trust me, when you say 20, 30, 40 officers out of 9,000 men on LAPD, men and women, that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's terrible. But what happens is it gets blown up rather than just recognizing that these people are criminals that have somehow worked their way into law enforcement ranks. The whole department suffers. I mean,
sure it does.
I believe in a positive thinking rather than the negative thinking. I would not, if I was in charge of the CHP Academy, I would not set down some policy that promotes snitching off anybody for anything. That's the job of the CHP Academy staff.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's healthy to start teaching people on the job to snitch people off. Now, you got to let human nature take its course. If you're on the job, let me take you to another level. Now you get on the job, and you're out. What they have, the CHP officer raped a woman down in San Bernardino, remember?
Right.
So you're out on the job, and you're riding along with this guy, and he sits there, and he starts talking to you, and he thinks you're pretty close partners and what have you, and he says, you know what I did? I got to tell somebody, and you're my partner, bud, and you and I have been together a long time here, and I just got to tell you, I raped that gal in that little Volkswagen that time. What would you do then?
Well, Mr. Pearce, I mean, like I say, it's a very case-by-case basis.
No, what you do then, Greg, is you bust him.
Well, sure you do.
That's what you do then.
That's what I'm saying. On a simple level, like academy training, where nothing serious goes on,
right?
Day-to-day activities.
Right.
Right. There's a camaraderie there, and you have to use your best judgment. What they're trying to get at is, when we do hit the road, is to maintain ourselves in a professional and ethical manner. And if we are coming across officers who are taking money off of prisoners or have committed crimes against persons like this.
But see, I mean, follow me on this, Greg, if you will, because I'm really going to stick you on this. I'm going to stick with you on this. Why should that have to be? You're sworn to uphold the law. When you raise your right hand and you swear to uphold the law and the Constitution as a law enforcement officer, I don't care what outfit you're with, and you find information later on that your partner or anybody's taking money off a prisoner, for instance, or doing something illegal, it's your already sworn duty. That's a violation of that person. And there's no question about snitching and giving something up. There shouldn't even be a question about it. And that's the point. I'm missing my point here, but the point I'm making is you're already sworn to do that when you raise your right hand and take the oath. That's what I hope the most people would feel. And I
think in addition to, I mean, we all know that being sworn as an officer, that is our obligation.
Right.
But I think in addition to that, the Highway Patrol has put that into their policy and put that into their training to try and to make it clear that the department will stand behind you when you try and come clean.
I think it's wrong.
You're not going to be.
I know. I don't want to criticize your academy. I love highway patrolmen, but I think it's wrong-headed policy to put that in at the academy level and start telling you guys that stuff. But you already have a duty to do the right thing. And let me ask you this, though. Let's say you're working Rampart Division LAPD, okay, where all this scandal's going on, and you're sitting there and your buddy says to you, I don't know what the salaries are. They're far more today than when I was in the job. But your buddy says, hey, we can make $1 million here in about 3 days. And I'll give you $500,000 and I'll take $500,000. A new set of circumstances, right?
Sure.
Sure. Now, what happens to the guy that's going to turn down $1 million? That's where it becomes a little tougher, doesn't it?
Well, it does. But at the same time, I mean, I know, like you say, the majority of law enforcement officers out there are clean. Mm-hmm. And I myself, if that situation was presented to me, wouldn't have any part of it. I feel that that's part of being a law enforcement officer. You maintain yourself. $500,000 is nothing compared to doing your duty out there.
Yeah, you got the right head on your shoulders. I'll tell you that, Greg. We're very fortunate to have you as going to be a CHP officer. Now, tell me, what do you look forward to most about being a CHP officer?
Actually, one of the main reasons I joined the Highway Patrol was because I really enjoy just helping people. And I saw the Highway Patrol as one of the more professional organizations that I'd seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began the process quite some time ago, and since then have not been interested in looking in any other branch.
You like to drive fast?
I do. In fact, today I was out on the EVOC course at 110 miles an hour. So.
Yeah, well, we went through a driving course, LA Sheriff's pursuit course, and they had us roll the car. You ever done that yet?
No, I haven't. They don't encourage that.
Well, no, they got cars. They have cages in them, and you have to roll it. You don't graduate unless you roll it. You go down there about 50 miles an hour, and you take a curve, and they have you talking on the radio with one hand, steering with the other. They put you into a turn that's too tight to make, and they got an instructor sitting next to you, and you're all harnessed in. But over you go. And that's an experience. Have you been on a skid pan yet?
Yes, I have. I just passed the skid pan a couple of weeks ago, and that was tough.
Tell me about your skid pan experience.
Well, I'm not that coordinated. I'm not a very good dancer, and when it comes to deliberately making a car skid on water, it's definitely an unnatural experience. And
you begin to... I know what you mean, Greg. And for those out there that haven't been on a skid pan, Greg is sharing with you that nobody's any good at going through a skid pan, are they, Greg?
No, you actually have to make yourself a bad driver.
That's right. You know, have you read the book, The Newhall Incident?
Actually, we have it for sale there in our PX, and our officer safety classes just discussed in depth that incident.
Yeah.
And we listened to interviews and videotapes from the gentleman, I use that word loosely, who did the shooting.
Yeah.
And it was quite an eye-opener. And since then, the department, most of their recent changes were made in officer safety because of that incident.
What's the policy on taking your weapon out on these stops?
Well, it's an officer discretion. Like I say, it's a use of force issue. If you're coming up on a stop and you suspect that if it's a brandishing a weapon call and you believe that there's a weapon inside that car, you approach with caution and use whatever force you have, whatever force is necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think you're going to be a great CHP officer, Greg, and
Well, thank you, sir.
I'm proud of you for giving your time to that service. And maybe after you get on the job and you get in that brand new uniform and you get out there running around at 110 miles an hour chasing these speeders, you'll call us back some night
I
and
will
we'll talk.
definitely do that. Hey, I appreciate the message you're putting out there.
Well,
I
thank
really
you for
enjoy
that.
your show.
Well, thanks a lot, Greg. You tell the guys up at the academy that I know a lot of CHP officers that have been involved in the academy. I worked for a former CHP officer who was my sheriff. His name was Larry Mansfield, and he was quite a CHP officer in his day. He got his leg ripped off, and he rode motors, and he was writing a ticket, and the car come in too close and ripped his leg right off, and he went on with a wooden leg to become the sheriff of. He used to hide his gambling stash down inside that wooden leg from his wife, and it's kind of a story I'll tell sometime about old Larry Mansfield. Well, Greg, you be safe out there, okay, bud?
All right. Thank you, sir.
Keep your powder dry and watch your six.
Thank you very much.
I'm Jerry Pearce, the Radio Detective. We're going to take a break right here, and we're going to come back for more of your calls. This is Squad Room Night here. I'll be right back. Don't you go away.
JFK, FBI, OJ, CIA, INS. It's all in a day's work when you're a PI. Jerry Pearce, the Radio Detective.
This is Squad Room Night on the Radio Detective Show. It's open lines, in other words. Anything that comes to your mind you want to talk about, give us a call here and we'll get you on and we'll chat about it. We just finished talking to Greg. He's a candidate or he's already a cadet, and he's going to be a highway patrolman going through his training there at the academy, and I enjoyed talking to him. He's going to be a great highway patrolman. Pretty soon, but in our day, those guys had to go out chasing them orange-haired hippies and them Volkswagen buses. He won't have to do that today, though, in these times. And we just received a inside piece of information from a law enforcement source that one of the officers went through surgery up there, and he's going to be in good shape. So our prayers go out for both of them and for the families, and we hope they catch the rest of those people, and I don't think they ought to be standing trial, fellas. You don't shoot two cops and get away with it. So if there's any opportunity to smoke them up, go ahead and do it. You got my blessing. And right now we're going to go to Albert, as a matter of fact, up in Modesto, California. Albert, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
It's going good, sir. How you doing?
I'm calling to see if you've heard about this. It's a brand new book. It's still in progress. It won't be out until March.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Red Mafia
I have not heard about that
by
one.
Robert Friedman.
I have not heard about that one. It's a brand new one, huh?
Brand new.
Okay. What is it? Is it just about what's going on with the Russian mafia in this country here?
He's from what I was in the library the other day. It's supposed to be like a new wave.
Mm-hmm.
They consider the Italian mafia like bocce players,
Mm-hmm.
and these guys are chess.
Oh yeah, well there's a big deal in this United States right now with Russian mafia. It's not only in Moscow. You've heard about it over there, but I am very friendly with some intelligence officers and active intelligence officers in this country that are working the Russian mafia day in and day out in all the major cities, and some not so major cities.
I think the main person you should get in touch with would be Robert Friedman.
Yeah, Jason wrote his name down. We'll get a hold of him, get him on here with that.
Okay.
In Modesto, about the officers out there, these guys that are running from the police up there.
That are running from the police?
Yeah. Anything over your news station? Any news breaking there?
I haven't heard anything about it. And I read the paper every day.
Well, it's on television. They shot up a jewelry store and shot a couple of officers, and apparently got 3 of them held up out there in Patterson, California right now. So I just thought I'd ask you,
I'm
Albert.
surprised that they don't have, in the Bay Area, they have laser discs on the freeway and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even have, they have the cameras here, but they won't put the laser discs in.
Well, I suppose all that's to come. You think that would be a good thing to have the laser disc and the cameras and all that on these freeways?
Not really, but if people don't, I mean, if you're going to shoot somebody, at least you'll know a month down the road what happened.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, technology is the answer to everything, but sometimes it can be a little invasive, don't you think, sometimes?
Yeah.
I don't know what the trade-off is. I really don't. I've thought a lot about that, too. I don't know what the trade-off is. We want to do the right thing by everybody. We want the technology to be there. At the same time, we gotta remember that our freedoms are being taken away from us by crooks. Really.
If you're if you any of the toll bridges to go on the other side of the bay,
Yeah.
they don't stop you anymore.
Really?
No, they wait for you to go home, and they send you the ticket to your house.
Because of the license plate number?
Yeah.
I'll be amazed. Huh. Well, Albert, we're going to look at Friedman on this book, the book on the Red Mafia, and if we can line him up, we'll get him on the show.
Love to hear it.
Okay, sir. Thanks for the call from Modesto. That's Albert checking in. You want to join the show, give us a call at 252-1075 or toll free from anywhere, 877-575-1075. I want to talk to you about something I've researched here. And as you know, if you've listened to the show over the past year and a half, I have very, very strong feelings when it comes to our veterans, our Marines, sailors, and particularly with this guy Clinton in the White House. And every time I've read over and over his letter in which he writes he loathes the military. And here he is, the president, commander-in-chief of the military. And every time I think about that, it makes me upset. And I think about the men and women in the military who are actually real people. I mean, real heroes. And what we're going to do on this show from time to time, and I informed Jason of my decision to do this, I'm going to highlight some of these military men and women who have served us in situations that I believe are true heroes. And tonight I'm going to tell you about a guy who's listed, by the way, as an MIA in Vietnam. He was listed as missing in action on April 24th, 1969, and his name is Jerry Michael Mad Dog Schreiber, 32 years of age when he was listed as missing, Sergeant First Class, 5th Special Forces Group, reported missing in action on April 24, 69 in Cambodia. Now, when you have people like Clinton, who say in letters they loathe the military, and yet passed himself off as a man, I'm going to tell you a little story here. And I've done some research on this. Another gentleman put all this stuff together. I'm going to describe to you as what I think some real men are. And this guy, Sergeant First Class Jerry M. Mad Dog Schreiber, from Sacramento, by the way. And he was a legendary Green Beret. He was an exploitation platoon leader with Command and Control South, MACV SOG, Military Assistance Command South, Vietnam Studies and Observation Group. He was a Joint Service High Command unconventional, engaged in highly classified operations throughout Southeast Asia. The 5th Special Forces channeled personnel into MACV SOG, and through Special Operations SOA augmentation, which provided their cover, while under secret orders to MACV SOG, the teams performed deep penetration missions of strategic reconnaissance and interdiction, which were called, depending on the time frame, Shining Brass or Prairie Fire missions. On the morning of April 24, 1969, Sergeant Schreiber's hatchet platoon was air assaulted into Cambodia by 4 helicopters. Upon departing the helicopter, the team had begun moving toward its initial target point when it came under heavy volumes of enemy fire from several machine gun bunkers and entrenched enemy positions estimated to be at least company size and in element. Schreiber was last seen by the company commander, Captain Paul D. Cahill, as Schreiber was moving against the machine gun bunkers and entering a tree line on the southwest edge of the LZ, that's landing zone, with a trusted Mountain Guard striker. Captain Cahill and Sergeant Ernest G. Jameson, the platoon medical aidman, took cover in a bomb crater. Cahill continued radio contact with Sergeant Schreiber for 4 hours until his transmission was broken and Schreiber was not heard from again. It was known that Schreiber had been wounded 3 or 4 times. An enemy soldier was later seen picking up a weapon, which appeared to be the same type which had been carried by Sergeant Schreiber. Jameson left the crater to retrieve one of the wounded mountain guards who had fallen in the charge. The medic reached the soldier, but was immediately torn apart by concentrated machine gun fire. At that moment, Cahill was wounded in the right eye, which resulted in total blindness for the next 30 minutes. The platoon man, by some knee, desperately radioed for immediate extraction. Major Benjamin T. Cap, Jr. was in the command helicopter, and he could see the platoon pinned down across the broken ground and rims of bomb craters. North Vietnamese machine guns were firing into the bodies in front of their positions and covering the open ground with grazing fire. Assistant Platoon Leader, First Lieutenant Gregory M. Harrigan, reported within minutes that half the platoon was killed or wounded, and Harrigan himself was killed 45 minutes later. Helicopter gunships and A-1E aircraft bombed and rocketed the NVA defenses. The heavy ground fire peppered the aircraft in return, wounding one door gunner during that strafing. Several attempts to lift out survivors had to be aborted, and then 10 airstrikes and 1,500 rockets had been placed into the area in attempts to make a safe extraction possible. First Lieutenant Walter L. Mercantile, third in command, called for napalm only 10 yards from his own front line, and both he and his 9 remaining commandos were burned by the splashing napalm. After 7 hours of contact, 3 helicopters dashed in and pulled out 15 wounded troops. As the aircraft lifted off, several crewmen saw movement in the bomb crater. A 4th helicopter sat down, and Lieutenant Daniel Hall twice raced over the bomb crater. On the first trip, he recovered the badly wounded radio operator, and on the second trip, he dragged Harrigan's body back to the helicopter. The aircraft was being buffeted by shell fire and took off immediately afterwards. No further MAC-V SOG insertions were made into the NVA stronghold. Jameson was declared dead, and Sergeant Schreiber missing in action. On June 12, 1970, a search and rescue recovery element from the Graves Registration Unit recovered human remains that were later identified as Sergeant Jameson, but no Sergeant Schreiber. For every insertion like Schreiber's that was detected and stopped, dozens of other commandos and their teams safely slipped in past the NVA lines to strike a wide range of targets and collect vital information. The number of MAC-V SOG missions conducted with Special Forces reconnaissance teams in Laos and Cambodia numbered 452 in 1969. It was the most sustained American campaign of raiding, sabotage, and intelligence gathering ever waged on foreign soil in U.S. military history. MAC-V SOG's teams earned a global reputation as one of the most combat-effective deep penetration forces ever raised. The missions Sergeant Schreiber and others were assigned were exceedingly dangerous and of strategic importance. The men were put into such situations, and they knew the chances of their recovery if captured were slim to none. They quite naturally assumed that their freedom would come by the end of the war. For 591 Americans, freedom did come at the end of the war. For another 2,500, however, freedom has never come. Since the war ended, nearly 10,000 reports related to missing Americans in Southeast Asia have been received by the U.S., convincing many authorities here that hundreds remain alive in captivity even today. Jerry Schreiber's friends claimed that they heard on Hanoi Hannah that Mad Dog Schreiber had been captured. They wondered if he's among the hundreds said to be alive today, and if so, what must he think of us? We're going to take a short break. I'm Jerry Pearce, the Radio Detective, and I'll be right back.
Jerry Pearce brings the power of law enforcement to bear on the bad guys of the Golden State. You can run, but you can't hide from the Radio Detective.
I'm Jerry Pearce, the Radio Detective, back with you. If you want to join the show tonight, it's Squad Room Night here. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about, whether it's law enforcement, politics, crime. Well, hell, when we talk about politics these days, we're talking about crime anyway. Let's shoot to Ray and Tulare. Ray, come on aboard. Hello, Ray?
Hello, yes. Yeah,
Oh.
This is Ray. Let me get this turned off.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, Mr. Pearce?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good, sir.
Great show. I'm a truck driver. I had a couple of questions I'm hoping you could help me with.
Yeah.
I'm a drug recovery for 10 years, ex-felon, been to prison and everything, but I cut all that loose with the good Lord's help and everything 10 years ago.
Right.
And since that time, I've been law-abiding. I've bought my own home and everything, and I've been married for 5 years. But my wife, like I said, I'm a truck driver, and she's always worried about being at home without me. There's nobody else there, and she'd been wanting a gun, so finally we went down a couple of months ago, and she purchased her a shotgun. You
Right.
know, and one of my questions is it legal for her? For her to have the gun and me live there? You know, like I said, it's my own home.
Right.
You know, but like I say, I'm also an ex-felon, but I'm not on parole or anything. You know, that's all over with. You know, but I'm wondering if it's legal for her to have the gun. You know, it's registered in her name and everything like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's the problem. If you're married and everything's community property,
Right.
then it becomes you also in possession of the gun, and you're an ex-felon in possession of a gun. However, I think that's what you should do to be safe on this. Is just call the district attorney's office or the local law enforcement. Where you live, Tulare?
Yes.
Give them a call over there and ask them what the current law is on. Maybe I don't think they've faced this before too many times.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You know, I've never been able to find out, Ray, because I don't know too many people that went through this. You know, like I'm saying. I'm with you. Well, in fact, like I say, in the crimes I committed, I mean, you know, I was a bad guy and everything, but I never did use a weapon or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? It was always nonviolent and stuff, you know. But like I say, I never was, you know, I was raised to respect a weapon, you know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, like I say, I hate leaving her there alone, and she kept wanting to get a gun, so, you know, we finally went down and let her buy her one, you know.
Well, why don't we do this? Let's ask. We got some coppers that listen to the show every night. I'm not sure there's any on right now, but if we have some out there, or some lawyers, we had a lawyer on here last night that...
right, yeah, I got to hear before
what the case holdings are on that, because they can't book her if she has no criminal history. I mean...
Exactly. No, she's completely clean, right, yeah. She's
right.
never had no criminal history, and she's the only one that touches the gun or anything, you know what I'm saying, as far as that goes. They don't have my fingerprints on it or anything like that, you know what I'm saying? It's there for her, and that's it, period.
I think that's this would be a great law school question, I think, or a law enforcement question. And, you know, what we ought to do, if we have any guys out there in law enforcement, guys or gals that have maybe run up against this before or want to recite the law for Ray while he's driving along listening to the show, give me a call here.
Great, I'd appreciate it. One more quick question, if you could help me. You know, it's my understanding after 5 years that I can file for a governor's pardon.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, you know, I was getting ready to do that. You know, it's been 10 years now.
Right.
And I was just wondering now, does that affect my rights as far as, you know, like if I do obtain the governor's pardon?
No, if you're pardoned, you're pardoned.
Right, but does that close as far as
that closes it all. You're pardoned.
Then it restores my rights.
You're right. That's right. You're pardoned. Period.
So I could have a weapon around me.
Yeah, you're pardoned. There's no. Once you get a governor's pardon, you haven't been a felon.
Great. That's what I was hoping to hear. You gave me a lot there, but yeah, I'd like to find out if there's anyone out there that could help me with that other question. I sure would appreciate it.
Well, we're going to ask them to call in here, and maybe we got a law enforcement officer, or a lawyer, even a prosecuting lawyer that might be able to call the show and answer that question.
Appreciate it. Anybody out there listening is hung up on old bad stuff out there, I'd just like to let them know there is a way out of it, you know, if they want out of it bad enough, you know, because I've done it and come a long way, bought my own home and everything else, you know, so if they just want to turn it around, they can do it, you know what I'm saying? So
we're proud of you, Ray.
Thank you, sir.
We're really proud of you. Okay, and you too, and drive safely out there. 252-1075 and toll free 877-575. The question is that Ray's asking, he is a felon. His wife is not. The wife wants to have a gun for protection while he's on the road traveling in his truck. And at times, however, he's home with the wife, and the gun's in the home. Now, is that, shall we call that a case of a felon in possession of a firearm, or is it not? And that's the question. Who's gonna get in trouble if they've come to the home and find the gun there and he's a felon there? Is he going down for it? He's not on parole. He's off of parole. He's just an ex-felon. And that's the question tonight. That's a great question, as a matter of fact. I don't know the answer. I think I know the answer, Jason.
Hey, Jer.
Yeah.
I've heard G. Gordon Liddy on TV talk shows and such.
Who's that?
G. Gordon Liddy?
I don't know. Really?
Watergate guy, you know,
no, really?
bald-headed.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He always boasts about his wife has all the weapons. He's a felon, and
right.
So that's that's over there in Washington.
Different state.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a good point, though. I didn't know that she had that many guns. That probably hasn't protected her from him. G. Gordon, he's quite a character, isn't he? So if any of you out there are lawyers, cops, prosecutors, defense lawyers, whatever we can dig up, that's a question we'd like to have answered for that gentleman driving that truck tonight. And Jason says we got to take one more break. We're going to do that. We're going to come back with the last part of the show. So if you want to join the show, it's been a fun time tonight talking about various things. And give me a call here.
The Radio Detective.
That's me, Jerry Pearce, the Radio Detective, with you right here. Let me ask you a question out there. What about police pursuits? I wanted to do this earlier in the show, and I didn't get a chance because we've been having the callers and having some fun here tonight. But what's your read on police pursuits? Should they be able to pursue a person at high speeds or whatever that has committed a felony? Or if, for instance, a law enforcement officer pulls behind a car and the car just takes off. They don't know what they've got on their hands, but it just takes off and doesn't stop for the car when the red light goes on. Should they be able to pursue him at high speeds through city streets? What's your read on that? Police pursuits have been kicked around a lot lately. We were talking about pursuing on foot earlier. There's a court decision came down, of course, the other day. This guy was in a high narcotics area, and the court ruled that the police, if he acts in a furtive manner, can stop and frisk him and go after him and chase him and all that stuff. But what about in the cars going through? In this collision up in Sacramento, the guy committed a murder. They were after him. The murderer ran. He's in the car. He crashed into a lady and killed her, and during the police pursuit. So what's the latest read in the community regarding that? And I'd like to hear your comments on it. I was talking about foot pursuit a moment ago, and Jason said, well, Jared, did you ever lose one of those guys you were chasing? And I said, on foot. And I said, I sure did. And, of course, Jason thinks that I'm just the greatest thing on the planet, that I would never lose anybody. And but I said, well, I did. And he said, well, how did that happen? And I said, well, I was chasing this guy at nighttime, and I was catching up to him. He was being in real good shape, and this crook was also in good shape, however, a little better than me and faster. And I'm chasing him through this yard. And so he heads through this alleyway alongside the house, driveway, and he goes through a gate and through this backyard, and he goes up over the fence. I'm hot on his trail, man. I'm really moving. So I'm up over the fence right behind him. I jump down the other side of that fence and smack right into a swimming pool. So that's how I lost him. I'm sitting there fully in uniform in a swimming pool with my baton floating nearby, my hickory baton. And I looked over, and there's this big bulldog licking its lips sitting over there by the ladder that you get out of the pool on. Now, that's really a predicament to be in. True story, and that's how I lost my fleeing suspect. Anyway, let's go to John in Madera, California. John, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, how's it going, Jerry?
It's going.
It's great. Listen, I haven't called in a while, but I sure.
Yeah, where you been, by the way, John?
Well, I've been working overtime.
Oh, okay.
And when I work overtime, I miss your show, and it really breaks my heart. But, if they need me, there I am.
Yeah, you're protecting us and keeping those people behind the bars, huh?
Well, yeah. But I wanted to make a couple of comments. I wanted to remind all your listeners that Commie Bill only has 11 months left before we kick his butt out on the street.
Well, there's another way to look at that, John. We have 11 months to go ahead and try to prosecute him, too.
Well, yeah, but...
We got him right where we got him surrounded.
I think what's going to have to happen is for that dirtbag to get out of office, and then all these people that are scared, and we get rid of all his comrades that he put in high positions, especially that thing called Janet Reno that's at the Justice Department.
Right.
But I wanted to put in my 2 cents on the anthrax situation.
Right.
My own opinion on that is the people that are taking that serum are down the road. I figure 2, 3, 4 years down the road are going to come up with the diseases that some of the individuals that were over in the Gulf War have come up with, and it's really devastated a lot of American troops. And if the truth be known, it was probably produced by some of Commie Bill's comrades in a foreign land.
Well, the thing is, John, do you smell anything about... They're really uptight about these people not taking these shots. And do you think that, do you think there's something that they're not telling, that the people need to take these shots to offset something else that happened they're not talking about yet? That only they know?
Well, my opinion is they know that whatever they're inoculating these people with, and they call it an anthrax shot. Because when's the last God bless time that we had an anthrax outbreak? Come on, think about it.
Yeah, I know.
But it's a good way for the potential enemies of this nation to introduce something that's a sitting time bomb. And the smart people that are in the military are saying, Chale, no way, you take it or give it to Hillary.
Right.
But it should be a voluntary, because where on this God's earth is there anthrax outbreaks?
Right.
There isn't.
Right.
So it's a way, in my opinion, for Commie Bill and his comrades to get something into these young bodies that belong to our military that'll be a time bomb, and down the road they're going to become sick.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what he's done to the military. I found out the other day, just talking to an ex-Marine who happens to be a sergeant in the department, that we don't have Marine detachments on board ships like we used to. Remember?
Yes, I sure do.
They've closed down Marine barracks throughout the world. They've devastated the Army, the Air Force, in regards to some of those units don't have spare parts, ammunition. We probably shot the last 2 or 3 cruise missiles that were, when's the last time they were built? 82 or something?
Yeah, right.
And all of this is a plan that Commie Bill and his comrades orchestrated, decimating. Look at what we did. We gave over.
John, on the Panama Canal deal, I've got some material that's been sent to me by some lawyers in Washington, D.C. that I know. And, excuse me, I think I'm dying, Jason, that he was told by the Joint Chiefs of Staff and some other people that this shipping company, Wampau Limited, I think it is, that's taking over down there to run the canal, is a direct threat to the United States for some kind of top secret reasons they've discovered, and it didn't come out. But Bill Clinton received that notice sometime before this changeover occurred. So under the National Security Act, he had room to move on that, to block it. And so that's coming out, and I'm trying to get Alan Favish and some other guys on here. When that breaks and we get the rest of the story in place, we're going to bring it on the air about what this administration was told by their own military leaders regarding the threat to this nation now because of the Panama Canal situation. And I've said, regardless of national security, on the basis of that, it opens up tremendous drug trafficking channels that have never been there before, right through Mexico and right in our back door here.
Well, sure, because the Chinese are replacing that piece of crap Noriega. But remember one thing, you had a guest on a couple of weeks ago or a month ago that said that the Chinese communists have already set up communication stations in Brazil.
Right, that's right. And they've already been in some conflicts down there.
Sure.
They've already been in some firefights.
Because they need that. Now, a lot of the, you just watch, and the buildup is probably already here, but a lot of the Chinese troops are coming in as civilian, in civilian garb, but they're going to be setting up their little, and we're not doing anything. It really irritates me that the Republicans, who should be the first line of defense against this commie administration, are not doing or saying a thing. It doesn't come up in the presidential candidates' debates. To me, the media in America is controlled by the liberal socialists, and they forget the first thing that the communists or socialists do when they take over a country is they get rid of all the newspaper editors and everything.
Well, the thing is, if forget the newspaper editors and the rest of the media. Just think about the Republicans that are in office right now, and you got to ask yourself. I mean, there's some that are trying real hard. Dan
Sure.
Burton, Some of those people are pushing on this stuff as hard as they can. But the whole thing, I got to go pretty quick, but John, but
sure.
When you stop and think about it, the whole thing comes down to Janet Reno's deal. It stops at her desk on a lot of this stuff. I got to go, John.
Okay.
Talk to you Monday night. We'll be back here with the Radio Detective. Tomorrow is a rerun, actually an encore presentation, Radio Detective Show. Until then, lay off that whiskey, let that cocaine be, and may the good Lord take a liking to you.
The Radio Detective, brought to you by the California Correctional Peace Officers Association. They walk the toughest beat in the state.